Pretty exciting day here. 300K up for grabs on DraftKings and FanDuel also running tournaments. Joined here by Jeremy Schritt, aka Pick'em Genius, and Jake Hari, aka Jake Hari. How are you guys doing today?
Good. Yeah, it's exciting to have a DFS sport, and like you said, Alex, I saw your tweet. 100K to first, so it's pretty normal for the first time in a few weeks. So that's even if you don't know anything about League of Legends, I'll be asking some of the noob questions, I guess we'll call them, to these guys, and hopefully they can steer me in the right direction here.
That's perfect. I'm sure Jeremy can give you advice. Jeremy is our League of Legends expert. How are you doing, Jeremy?
I'm okay. I've been up for like a lot because LPL and LCK run late. So if it takes me like a few minutes to get into the groove, then that's whatever. Hopefully someone that's watching will win big today. Yeah. Dude,
you're a true legend if you stayed up watching those LCK and LPL matches, because that is pretty dedicated. Yeah, so we got this 100K up for grabs today, talking about some LCS. In case you haven't played League of Legends yet, the LCS is the American League. Actually, it's supposed to be like one of the weakest leagues as far as talent, but the prize pools are the biggest. So it's kind of this interesting dichotomy where maybe we're taking some players that aren't even necessarily the legends of LOL, but compared to the competition, it's some of the top talents in the U.S. But Jeremy, let me make sure I got this right. So, like, how do you feel about the different leagues, and how does the LCS compare to the others?
So internationally, comparatively, the LCS has had the worst performances all time. They are the only major region that hasn't won a world championship. So not great. We tend to struggle to beat the LPL and LCK teams, and most of the time the LEC teams. So yeah, we're kind of the clear fourth out of four major regions.
So let me just throw a question to you here. Who are the stars in the LCS that, you know, if you're new to the sport, like these are the guys who are like the top talents?
So the two people I would say that are like the cornerstones, the pinnacle, the peak of the LCS are Doublelift and Bjergsen. They've been around for ever. Doublelift literally played in the first World Championship, and this is the 10th season. So he's kind of been around the block. And Bjergsen came from Denmark in season 3 or 4, and he's just he's the best mid laner in the league, some people say, for since then.
Nice, man. Yeah, Bjergsen, was he the guy that got the pentakill yesterday? That was pretty rad.
He was the guy that scored like 70 in the captain spot and lost.
That was epic. So Doublelift, I was surprised that he's not actually a weightlifter. Like you'd think so, but actually a magician. Jake, have you been watching a lot of games? Do you have any favorite players yet?
So no, I've not been watching anything. I know you can find the stream somewhere. I don't even know. It's not like I'm busy. I don't really have an excuse. I should be watching and grinding these out. But maybe it's just because I've been playing the European slates, and those are overnight for us. So haven't had that much dedication to watching. But I have been playing pretty much every day. And so I've got some just like macro questions for everyone, for you guys especially. In terms of the different leagues, I've noticed just based on the projections, I'm just using the tools on the site. And I'm sure Alex will talk about all the tools that he's made. They're kind of similar to some other tools that we have for other sports. So it was kind of a quick pickup for me as far as like the stacking. I guess what's the difference between like the LCS? This is a best of 1 game, if I'm correct, right? Compared to the best of 3. So how does that kind of change your strategies as you play these different League of Legends slates?
Yeah, I mean, the number of games in the match, like we've seen in all the DFS esports, this is huge because Rocket League can be best of 7. Of course, in Counter-Strike, they play up to 30 games in each set. So, Jeremy, how do you handle the different like Asian best of 3 versus the American and European like 1-game matches?
like since every league is pretty different, it just matters how you kind of project that the players are going to do individually. Since the LAC and the LCS are on their own separate slate, and they're best of ones, they're pretty easy to just singularly focus on that. Whereas in the LCK and the LPL, it's more of like a stylistic difference, and that's more of something that you're going to want to look into than anything else, since they both play best of threes.
Yeah, so today, best of one to win this 300K. So the main thing for me is like yesterday, we did see someone in a losing game put up huge fantasy points, but it's usually very difficult because there are only 5 games, and the general like way League of Legends plays out is one team will so-called like snowball their way to victory, where they have a little bit of an edge. They get some kills of the other team that gives them a bigger edge, and then they keep kind of building on that lead. Makes it very hard for the other team to score fantasy points. Yesterday was pretty unusual in that the first game we saw a reversal where one team was ahead big and the other team came back to win. So Jeremy, maybe you can give some insight on what happened there.
So Bjergsen, who got a pentakill and scored a lot of fantasy points, he played one fight really badly. They could have just won the game, scored more fantasy points, but he held flash and he was just very greedy. He tried to be really greedy, and it just all went downhill from there, really. A 10K gold lead, you should win that like 95% of the time. It's just unfortunate.
Yeah, it's crazy because in League, it's like you're watching the games, and it's like so obvious who's going to win. But then it takes another 10 minutes, and they're racking up all these fantasy points. So let's talk about some general lineup construction strategies for anyone watching. Just some general fundamentals for how you build your lineup today, especially maybe some people building League for the first time. So Jake, I'll throw this one to you, man. What have you found to be the most effective in League?
Yeah, so I've actually been doing. I did one study a pro article, and Nolan's done a bunch for NFL, and we've done some for NHL as well. And what the idea of the article is just like break down what one of the pros did, or in this case, 2 of the pros are doing on a specific slate. So while you can't just take one slate to the bank and say this is like the catch-all strategy for everything, I did study both you, Alex, and our friend Brian Hooper, Brick75. And what I noticed is a lot of 4-3 stacking. So right away, my interest was piqued as far as playing League of Legends DFS, even though I don't know anything about it. I figured that if you can get an edge with lineup construction, there's probably something to this as far as it being a profitable sport, especially at the lower stakes. And then I noticed the positionality of the captain spot is pretty important on DraftKings. You're really using a lot of ACD and mid in your captains, and so that was one of the things I was looking at as well, and just kind of Xing out some of these lower scoring captains that weren't those 2 positions. So what do you guys think about that? I mean, I do notice in some of the top pros lineups that they do play some non ACD and mid captains. I guess how do you decide which of those captains to play?
Yeah, Jeremy, you were telling me on one of our first shows that you mostly started off just playing ADC and mid, and then you kind of opened up your strategy a little bit. But what's your strategy these days?
It really depends on the matchup, because usually AD carries and mid laners have a higher ceiling. A lot of the time, if you're playing a top laner or jungler or even a support, there's a support lineup in the LCK LPL slate today that was very, very popular. Those lineups tend to offer a lot more safety in that you're expecting your whole team to win. So really what you're banking on with the AD carry or mid lane captain is maybe an upset to happen, or one of the more evenly matched matches to like swing significantly in one way and give you an edge by having 2 mid laners or 2 AD carries go off.
Yeah, exactly. Like basically, like these are the most expensive guys on the team. Mm-hmm. So to make the salaries all work, you need to have 2 teams that, like maybe one is a big underdog or both aren't the biggest favorites on the slate. So like you are making a sacrifice if you're going with the best players on the team, the captain spot. But like the general thing is that today we have 5 games. There's going to be 5 winning teams, and that means that there's going to be teams that aren't that expensive that put up some fantasy points. So it does help if you stack a team to put the guy with the highest chance of being the top scorer and the captain. And in my research, about half the time it's like the ADC, a third of the time it's the mid lane, and then occasionally like the jungler, and rarely the top and support. Of course, I've only been following League of Legends for a relatively short amount of time. Are there any players that may be exceptions to the rule, Jeremy?
What'd you say? Any players that are exceptions?
Exceptions to the rule for Jeremy. Like maybe there's some star players of maybe top or jungle that might be worth considering more than others.
Yeah, and again, it depends on the slate, but like today, you just look at Blabber from C9, and he's someone that's like very aggressive and really looks to seek out action early, and he can score almost as well as mid laner and AD carries, and he has scored better than them in some games. Yesterday, I think he went like 9-0-9, so you'll take that like every day of the week.
Yeah, I mean, he was the top scorer on Cloud9, or
yeah, he had like 51 fantasy points.
That was insane. I mean, usually like a good score in League of Legends one game is like 40. Like that'd be like an exceptional score. So 50 is just like off.
Oh no, my bad. It was 49.34. My bad.
I mean that still like basically 50. So
yeah, like, basically 50.
Yeah. So one of the so we talked about captain, maybe mid and ADC. So Jake, what have you been finding like with the rest of the lineup? What's your general strategy been?
So my general strategy is just to do 4 threes and use Fantasy Cruncher and the tools on the site. Your projections, the top stack tool is definitely one that I'll be looking at. I saw you posted that maybe yesterday, Alex. So that was a super popular tool for MLB subs, and we would reference that. We have one for basically every sport now that it makes sense, and then the boom bust is kind of the parallel for NBA. And so like I did see, I noticed in your strategy guide also that you said the team spot is actually the least correlated with the rest of the lineup. Is that right? And so I was experimenting with running some 4-2-1s and one-offing the team. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah. Oh, you can go.
Oh, no, go ahead, Jeremy.
All right. So yeah, that's actually something that towards the beginning of the year, I hadn't really considered. But at the start of the year, I noticed in a 2-game slate, I was like, I can get 2 mid laners from both of the favorites and kind of just hope the team doesn't kill me. It didn't work that time, but ever since then, I've been looking into it more and more. And I think it's probably viable. I wouldn't go all out, but I think it's pretty viable.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like in Excel, you can type in like the coral function to kind of give a sense of how like related the different scoring for the positions are. And I found that there's only like a 15% correlation on winning teams between like the players in the team spot, but there's about a 50% between all the players on the team. So like because the scoring is so much different for the two, like the team spot like generally is a steady burn throughout the game, kind of securing these objectives. But you can definitely rack up a lot of kills and skip a lot of the objectives and put up big fantasy points as the individual players. So like the team, if I was going to punt one position, like I'd punt team, you got to get lucky and have your team win, which is a little bit of harder to do if you have 3 teams, players from 3 teams on your lineup as sub 2. But definitely, if you're trying to take down a tournament with 30,000 people, you're going to have to cover some more unlikely circumstances, or else your lineup's going to be duplicated a lot. So, Jeremy, I know like people talk about dupe lineups, people having like the same lineup as 80 other people in League of Legends. On a 5-game slate, maybe not quite as big a concern, but how do you feel about lineup duplication in the LCS?
So it does kind of change or tie in with what we were just talking about. A lot of the times you'll build lineups and they'll have $200 to $400 difference, but you'll get a 4-3 stack. And like a really easy way to just be different is to drop to like a team that costs $200 more or $200 less. You could go from like 40, 50 dupes to like 3 or 4. And of course, like you said, you need more outcomes to go your way, but then you're only splitting it 3 or 4 ways instead of 30 or 40 ways. And that's really nice. I would prefer to do that way more often than 30 or 40 ways.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, anyone who's played a lot of DFS, especially playoff slates and whatnot, is like sometimes you get first and you win like $600 even though it's 100K to first. So, Jake, what's your experience been with League of Legends with the dupes?
Yeah, I noticed that, and so especially when the projections were free, now they're behind the paywall. It's a little bit different. There's obviously going to be a few less people using them, so I don't know. We'll see how it goes, but especially for a slate like today, with 100K to first, and like on DraftKings and they're $15, we got 100K to first, 25K to second. So like if you do dupe with 10 or 15 people up at the top, but you do split that top prize, it's not that big of a deal. So you actually prefer, I think I would prefer the top heavy payouts for sports like League of Legends that lend itself to more dupes. Like Showdown NFL was one that I played a ton as well. And so you split it with 5 or 10 or 15 people, you're still getting a really nice cash if you do end up finishing first. But like today, if everyone's just going to be jamming in 4 threes, like I'll be more likely to do a 4-2-1 and just hope that I get lucky with the team spot and get a little bit of a different line of construction. Like you said, Jeremy, maybe you're splitting with 3 or 4 people as opposed to 50 people or something like that. I think I saw an 87-way tie for third on this morning's slate. And so like I'm just not interested in that. So I've got a way to kind of use the ownership projections to make sure I'm not getting lineups that are going to be duped more than like 10 times. So yeah.
All right, guys, we need a little bit of love from the community here. So if you're watching, make sure to hit the thumbs up. That will reduce the chances that 87 people will tie for first today. Let's hope for one person winning 100K. That would be the greatest outcome, I think.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly.
All right, so we've talked a little bit about the stacking. Jeremy, like what would be like a reason you might build a lineup that is less stacked?
The reason that I would build a lineup that's less stacked, which I rarely do, is that I think something's going to go crazy in like multiple games. We saw something in LEC yesterday where some of the games didn't matter and they kind of went off the rails. So if I were going to expect that, maybe I would want more pieces from more games. Today might not happen. It could happen, but it's more difficult to think it will happen today.
Yeah. So you mentioned yesterday on the show that the playoff scenarios are still in flux. I know you're saying you posted in Slack earlier about like the playoff scenarios today. But just give us a quick rundown of which of these games might be important and others that might be kind of just for fun.
I would say just on a entire level, the most important game is the EG Immortals game, because if EG wins, then Team Liquid has something to play for, and they will need to win. And if Immortals wins, then Team Liquid is out of playoffs, and everything after that might go bottoms up. So, yeah.
So Alex, how do you account for that in projections? Like, I mean, because we're not going to have that information. Do you just play it straight up? Like both of these teams are going to have something to play for. I don't exactly remember how you do it in like MLB at the end of the season. I know it's just like a crapshoot, but trying to compare it to other sports, like how would you account for that, or do you account for that at all?
So I think in League of Legends, I'm still learning the game to some extent, so I'm relying on the sports books to kind of get it right. As far as like the odds of teams to win, and like if the odds, it's interesting in League of Legends because they don't put up backups usually. They usually run the same guys.
Okay.
So that is one factor that is kind of the same, and I mean like as someone who understands the game a little bit, but not like to the fullest extent, like, I mean, you can kind of play around with your opponents and maybe not like put in the finishing like attack and get some more fancy points. But for the most part, like the optimal strategy is pretty like consistent. You can make some champion choices that might be off the board, and that affects the fantasy scoring a little bit. But I think Jeremy might be able to answer this question better. Is like, what does it mean if a team is kind of phoning it in, or maybe trying something new, or however you want to put it?
So if games are less important, you'll see champions that are like might not have been played in 2 or 3 years just competitively, and they'll just run it down. They just run at you and kill people. Like Fnatic and Vitality, each team had over 30 kills. When that game originally might not have had 30 kills combined. So it just, if the games don't matter, teams are less inclined to take it seriously. Yeah.
That's a darn shame. Who wouldn't take League of Legends seriously? But
Toxic people.
Jake, what were you gonna say?
No, I mean that's really good information. I mean, and so there's no late swap on DraftKings, so maybe I don't know. I might think about kind of bumping those guys down, or making sure that, I guess, something we would do in like a game that is has a chance of rain or something. MLB is either like stack it or nothing, so no one-offs type of thing. I'm sure there's a way that you could probably get an edge playing those games if you do account for those types of scenarios, or maybe, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that's the only thing I could think of, is like comparing that to a game with rain, and like, or like at the end of the season when teams don't have anything to play for, they're less likely to play their starters. But it sounds like they will continue to play their starters. They might just not play as hard.
Yeah, we see this a lot in NFL Week 17, where the 1 p.m. games might make the 4 p.m. games irrelevant. And like the way you build your lineup should fit some sort of narrative there. Like on this particular slate, Evil Geniuses are one of the better teams in the league, so they are kind of expensive. So like doing a Evil Genius Cloud or a Team Liquid stack. Wait, hold on. So Team Liquid plays right after that game. Team Liquid actually is a pretty big underdog today. So I guess like you could build an Evil Geniuses Team Liquid stack, or now I'm confusing myself. So do we want Team Evil Geniuses to win or lose for Team Liquid to put up?
Team Liquid wants Evil Geniuses to win. Yeah.
Well, which scenario is better for fantasy?
Wow, that's a great question.
That's why this narrative thing is so hard, I think.
Yeah. So for fantasy, if you wanted to just go off of potential like narrative, you want Immortals to win, and then TLC9 to just go crazy, and then play a lot of TLNC9 and hope that it goes Vitality and Fnatic, where Vitality was really cheap, Fnatic were big favorites, and both teams get 30 kills. For fantasy wise, that's what you want. For viewing wise, you want EG to win, and because it's easier to like project that.
Right. So you could game stack a game that has nothing to play for potentially.
If you think that the TLNC9 game might get crazy and you wanted to game stack, this is one of the ultra rare times I would even think about it.
Okay, cool.
Generally,
I was going to ask you guys about game stacking too. What are your general thoughts on that? It sounds like it's kind of a no-no, but I have seen some players, maybe not pro players, but just like some random people binking stuff with game stack types.
So here's what's up is like in League of Legends, the winning team usually, depending on the league, averages between 140 and 160 fantasy points combined as a team. The losing team is around 50 to 60.
Okay.
So there is like a huge amount of things that need to go right for the losing team to put up a relevant fantasy performance. Yeah. And I think that we saw yesterday, like it happens, and maybe like it'll be a little bit fresher on people's minds, so they haven't figured out maybe that it's a bad idea. So I'm kind of hoping
it's a bad idea.
Yeah, I'm hoping that people maybe like game stack more than they should. I will talk about Fantasy Cruncher a little bit here because Fantasy Cruncher is how I build my lineups for League of Legends. So what you have to do to ensure that you don't have players on the opposite team, you go to the position stacks tab, and you say you have to pick for each position. You have at most 0 players. You select all the positions from the opposing team, and that will guarantee that you don't have any players facing each other. If you're only doing 4-3s, since you need to roster players from 2 different games, you don't have to worry about it though. So that's one tip if you want to mass enter to improve your chances of winning this tournament today. Jeremy, do you use Fantasy Cruncher or hand build, or what do you do?
So before Fantasy Crunch was a thing, I would hand build however many lineups I would do because I had to. So I'm slowly transitioning into being more proficient with Fantasy Cruncher and having it give me what I want. I'm not quite where I would like to be yet when using it. So sometimes I do default to hand building still, but I'm learning a lot about it, about using it.
It seems like ancient history that Fantasy Cruncher released for League of Legends, but I guess it was like a week or 2 ago. So everyone's trying to figure it out at the same time here. So any tips, Jeremy? Since you're kind of new to the Fantasy Cruncher, what have you learned that maybe someone who hasn't used it before might need to know off the bat for League of Legends?
I've learned that setting when I'll add stacks like team stacks, 4 stacks, and 3 stacks. I've learned that limiting that immediately isn't necessarily the best idea because sometimes you just want it to give you the information that it's going to give you, and then you should just limit it after it gives you an initial crunch. So run multiple crunches is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah. So crunching or building a lot of lineups can be kind of an educational experience because you're seeing what are the teams that are coming up. Maybe one team is really expensive and they're really good plays, but when you set the constraints really tight, like 4-3, maybe it's really hard to get a lineup that has 4-3. And I see that a lot in the Asia leagues where it's sometimes you can't really stack the 2 teams you want. You gotta loosen it up a little bit. So we talked about maybe having the team slot the one-off. Jake, any other tips for League of Legends Fantasy Cruncher so far?
Yeah, so I like the team spot, as I mentioned, and it sounds like you guys agree that the team is the best spot. It's kind of one-off or punt to get a unique lineup construction. So I'm going to be running some crunches with 4-2-1s and then kind of going through my lineups and picking out the ones that I like. So I like what you said, Jeremy, about running multiple crunches, running different sort of lineup constructions. I think if you are just, if you just want to fire 150 lineups in and just go with the projections and you're at lower stakes, maybe you're playing the mini max, I think 4-3 is probably your best bet to avoid any sort of game stacks. And I mean, I had a pretty big blunder the other day. Someone in Slack mentioned me and said that I had a bunch of game stacks, and that's because I didn't set up the rules in the correct way to get team one-offs while also not having players going up against each other. So I had a bunch of game stacks near the top, and of course they slid down the leaderboard very quickly. So I'm going to try to avoid that. Like Alex said, make the rules. It's a little bit tedious, but you can just kind of click through once you set up everything at most 0 players from opposing team. And then you can run, if you want to do 3-3-1 or I guess it wouldn't be, but 4-2-1, 3-3-1, whatever you want to do to get a little bit different if you're chasing after this 100K. I play around with the uniques, like the general advanced settings options, like randomness and uniques. And I err on the side of more randomness because I could always take that lineup out if it sucks, if it projects poorly, or if it's going to have too many chalky players in the lineup. So I haven't messed around with the groups tab, and I'm sure there's a way to upload the My Data tab and, get some other good information up on Fantasy Cruncher if you guys have a way to do that, if you're more experienced with League of Legends than I am.
The My Data tab is pretty useful. but it's not something I've been using for League of Legends necessarily. My strategy is always to build a lot of lineups and kind of narrow it down to the ones I want. So it depends how you want to do it. Maybe my data, you can kind of set some different rules for constraints. So like your projection shouldn't be below like a certain amount. One tool you can use is the auto group creator, which they just implemented for Fantasy Cruncher, where you can build a lot of groups at once. But mostly the position tab, like another stack people like to do sometimes is the ADC mid stack. So you could like set a positional rule that says you need your mid or sorry ADC support. So you could say that you want your support to be on the same roster as your ADC. So that's just one thing. But about halfway through the show, let's start breaking down some of these games. So Jake, right off the bat, you know, what games are you kind of looking to today?
Yeah, it looks like and kind of another maybe general strategy we could hit on is there are some absolutely massive favorites I've noticed. And those odds are right on Fantasy Cruncher that you can see. They've got the odds column there. And so I use that to kind of see, all right, who are going to be the chalkiest teams, look at the ownership projections and everything like that. The team I'm getting the most of is 100. What do you guys think about that? It looks like they're one of the larger favorites on the board. I'm just getting a ton of them. Their ownership is pretty low, it looks like. What do you guys think about that?
Jeremy, I'll throw this one to you.
100 Thieves are going to be popular because they are playing the worst team in the league at CLG, and they did beat TSM yesterday. I'm probably going to have a little bit less, but I'll probably match the field with the 100 Thieves because that game, while like we've mentioned games that could go crazy, that game is another one since it's after TL that could go crazy. The best thing I can say is that I'll probably be even with the field, and I think that 100 Thieves in general are good plays. I still worry a little bit about Ryoma and his matchup against Pobelter, but I worry about Ryoma and his matchup against everybody. So that's about the only thing I would take pause is that I would get a lot of other people that aren't Ryoma is mostly what I'm saying. And I know that Ryoma projects well for you, but I still just don't like the matchup as well against basically any other mid laner.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm trying to handle this this ownership stuff because I'm running a little bit behind today. But
so I just updated ownership again, and maybe I had an older version or it hadn't been run yet, but still kind of the same thing. 100 Thieves is kind of my top team here. One of the underdogs that I'm getting a little bit of is, and sorry, I have the abbreviations on my sheet. So DIG. What do you think of them? That looks like they're about plus 150, 160. I've seen, and I've also seen like some of these pros like targeting games, not game stacking, but just targeting a game that looks like it's going to be pretty closely competitive. So like a plus 150, minus 150 situation. And if there is an outlier performance, like they're going to give themselves so many chances of actually taking down a tournament because as it is with everything, like when someone's a slight underdog or a slight favorite, and there's way bigger favorites on the board, they kind of don't gravitate towards those games. So I'm seeing some really low ownership for DIG here.
Yeah, so that's especially like prevalent in the Asian leagues because the LPL is generally better for fantasy than LCK. Sure. So like if you're looking at those slates, certain games will be much higher owned than others. And that's kind of the trend. I've noticed that LPL are considerably more popular than if both leagues are equal. Now with LCS, it's kind of on a team by team basis to find, you know, which matchups have the most fancy potential. So Jeremy, I'll throw this to you, man. What games, like maybe we don't know who the winner will be, but have a good shot at being in the winning lineup?
So we touched on this game a little bit earlier, but I really like the EG and Immortals matchup since both of those teams have reason to play well and reason to want to win. It's really the last potential game that could like unlock it's the last part of the puzzle. Whatever happens in that game is going to affect other games. So I want that more of that because it's going to be important and it's easier to project. And I think EG is better than Immortals, and I think they're a little bit under-owned right now. So I really like the EG and Immortals game. And another thing, Immortals tends to take games long. They really like their 40-minute plus games, and it doesn't take a lot for those kind of games to get slightly off center and have like 20 kills, and your 80 carry and your mid laners have like 400 or 500 farm instead of like 200 or 300. So it's just longer games can provide a better fantasy output.
That's definitely true because, I mean, the length of game in League of Legends obviously is not fixed like sports usually are. So that is going to affect the fantasy scoring a lot because one of the popular statistics in League of Legends is kind of like the team kill plus death per minute. And if you just extrapolate that, like the length of the game matters a ton. And although it's not equal like every single minute, like that's going to be big. And that's a big part of why, like, even if you can get the winners right, like it's going to be hard to predict, especially on a 1-game slate, which game is going to be like in the winning lineup. So that's kind of like another advantage of stacking is that you're getting a bunch of guys from a game that might be longer than the other games. And that gives all those guys more fantasy potential. So, of course, in a 5-game slate, like there might not be any outliers that really are that far from normal as far as like the game length or kills or whatever. So we're kind of playing for the probabilities here. All right, so let's go through some of these games. Jake, you're mentioning the 100 Thieves at Counter Logic Gaming. Mm-hmm. Counter Logic, the last in the league as far as record. Definitely a weak team, so 100 Thieves are about a 70% chance to win this one. Jake, who are you finding that you're getting the most of on this team?
The players on the team?
Yeah.
It looks like I'm getting a lot of Stunt, Cody's son. Those are kind of my top 2 exposed guys right now. Stunt, but I have no Stunt in the captain because he's not ADC or mid. And so I think what I'm going to end up doing is just basically Xing out anyone that's not ADC or mid from my crunch in the captain spot and still allow them to play in the regular spots, and just kind of focus on the ADC and mid guys in the captain only, and hopefully get some lower owned guys because it looks like some other guys are getting ownership at captain that I'm not as interested in.
Yeah, so that definitely is a good strategy if you want to nail the top scoring guy in the team. Gives you the best chance of having the winning lineup for sure. And I've looked at the ownership at captain for different spots. Usually, ADC and mid have about 50% more ownership than the other spots. In my opinion, that's not enough to counteract the advantage you get from picking them. All right, so Jeremy, I know you're talking about how you're maybe laying off Ryoma in this game. So does that mean you're leaning more towards Cody's son if you had to pick a captain here?
Yeah, I prefer Cody's son's matchup against Stixay and Smoothie, and Stunt is like the 5th cheapest. He's the cheapest of the favorite supports. The teams that are favored, he's the cheapest support. So usually I don't like playing Stunt, but he's very cheap today. And if I'm playing 100 Thieves stacks, I'm going to probably get a lot of Stunt. But I do like Cody's son, and he's just really solid. And he can have, if the game, again, does go longer, that's really where he shines.
Nice. So obviously if we want a long game, if we're trying to get these guys right. So I'm actually intrigued. You're saying you're getting a lot of Stunt at captain, or is that just in the regular spots?
No, that's just in general. I do not trust Stunt to hit a ceiling game enough to roster him at captain.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was kind of thrown off because like his support is usually one of the bigger long shots to get there. I mean, sometimes we get like games that have maybe like 17 assists or something crazy, but still. Okay, and then we haven't talked about Medios yet. The jungler, he actually has been getting more fancy production out of the position than your average jungler. From my records here, how do you feel about him?
So Medios is someone he's just really good. Like he's like a baseline above average League of Legends pro, and he has recently been playing even better than that. And it is something that he has shown throughout his career, is that he can just be very impactful in a game. And in a matchup against the worst team in the league, I think you have to look at him.
Would you be comfortable using him in the captain spot, even though he is a jungler?
It would depend on who, like it would depend on the rest of your lineup. Okay. But I would say in this instance, yes, I wouldn't mind having some Medios captain because he's had 40+ point games this season, and if you're getting that from a jungler and it lets the rest of your lineup look really good, then yeah, I think it's fine.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm seeing really low ownership for him. So like on a team that is heavily favored, they're going to be popular, like you said. If you can, get a different lineup construction, and it looks like we've got him in the captain spot at under 2% ownership. So that might be a potential way to play a chalky team while also getting a little bit different.
Nice. Yeah, I'm looking. I just updated the ownership and top stacks for DK, so I can give you guys some of these numbers behind the paywall. So the 100 Thieves I'm projecting to make up 19% of the ownership today, and that is second on the slate. So a little bit of a chalkier team, of course, a big favorite. So their odds of being the top stack are the second highest at 14%. So maybe getting to Medios at captain makes your lineup a lot different than maybe going to Cody Sun or Ioma. So that could be a way to kind of get contrarian within a chalky stack. And then if we're talking about 100 Thieves being chalky, I mean, Counter Logic Gaming, they are the worst team in the league for sure. But only 2% projected ownership. And in League of Legends, anything can happen. I mean, especially they're not that big of underdogs. I mean, they have a 30% chance to win the game. So 2% ownership, that risk could be worth the reward. But Jeremy, are you willing to take some chances on Counter Logic Gaming, or is it just kind of like the talent's not there?
Yeah, I've mentioned this a few times already, but this game could be one that doesn't matter. And if it doesn't matter, then I want some shares of CLG. Like, definitely. I'm not confident in playing any of them, but you don't need a lot to be over the field, and that's pretty good. And the lineups that you do that I have gotten with them look nice.
Yeah, you can pack in some good players from other teams. So, I mean, a lot of times these teams in League of Legends that are kind of weaker, they're kind of the up-and-coming, like, really, really young guys. So is there anyone on Counter Logic Gaming that might be like a budding talent?
This is weird, but not really. Stixay's been around. Stixay's been around a while. Pobelter has been around since he was like 17, 6 or 7 years ago. Ruin's been around. Like, really, all these players are kind of like quadruple A players is the best analysis for me, in that they're like really good, but they're not insanely good.
Yeah. Okay. So not necessarily LCS players, which isn't a great sign for their chances, but still only 29% chance. At least they have a 29% chance to win. So decent chance. And then you're taking a lot of the field out because 100 Thieves is pretty popular. But the most popular team on the slate for the second straight day appears to be Cloud9. Team Liquid, you were mentioning, they have a shot at the playoffs, so this game could be really contested. But we saw Cloud9 put up a huge performance yesterday. Your guy, Blabber, Jeremy, we were talking about how good his fantasy performance was. So are you going back to the well here?
Yeah, he's expensive again, but if C9 does make this a higher kill, faster paced game, it's going to be because Blabber makes everything happen. And C9, if TL has a spot to play or has a reason or has a way to make playoffs, C9 are going to want to stomp that in the ground. No one wants to face TL in playoffs. C9 are going to want to destroy them. They're going to take the game very seriously because TL's won the last 4 LCS splits. So getting rid of them is very, very important. And Blabber, who's already very aggressive, is a good luck.
So while Phil is sitting here, like, I mean, you're making it sound like Team Liquid used to be stronger than they are this season. So maybe what are some of the lineup changes? Like what happened that they're not as good this year?
So at the start of the year, they lost their jungler, Xmithy, who plays for Immortals now. So they got a new jungler, but the new jungler had visa issues in Broxa and didn't play for the first 3 weeks of the season. So Surenfire, another import, played the first 3 weeks. They did okay with Surenfire, but everyone thought Broxa was going to be an upgrade, and he's not looked good. This split is a large part of it.
Okay, so that's interesting because if it's just one guy that's not pulling their weight, I guess since League of Legends is such a team game, that can make a big difference. You were mentioning how Double Lift is one of the best players in the league on Team Liquid, so they got kind of stars and scrubs lineup in Team Liquid. It sounds like.
No, they have all stars. Like they're just way underperforming. They're all really, really good. Core JJ has won a world championship, so like they're really good players. All of them are it's underperforming.
Man. A world championship, so that's like with all the leagues they play off at the end of the year, or?
Yeah, that's kind of like the World Cup where they have the 4 major regions and then they have a whole bunch of smaller regions. They all conglomerate and see who's the best.
I thought it was always like the Chinese and Korean guys that win it. How did
Core JJ is Korean and he was on a Korean team, so yeah.
Okay.
He was on it. Yeah, that's why they won. That's why he won.
Okay, so if we're trying to play for the upset here with Team Liquid, like who are we looking at?
It means that Double Lift probably cares about this game. His attitude in the media has been very nonchalant the last week or so. He got benched and was like, I can't do what I want to do on this team, and just kind of being a diva, which is not abnormal, but to this extent it's abnormal. So if he actually tries, I would look at Double Lift as someone who would carry the team.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the toxic elements of the sport is these superstar e-athletes that have egos. So you hate to see it. All right, Jake. Who's maybe like an underdog you're considering on this slate here from one of the other games?
Yeah, I was looking at Team Liquid, actually, when you guys were talking about them on the top stack tool. So again, I don't know much of anything about League of Legends, but you can use other strategies from other sports and kind of use that to your advantage for League of Legends. So I'm looking at the top stack tool, and it looks like we have Cloud9 being pretty overvalued, coming in pretty over-owned. And so that's immediately setting off the alarms. Like, they do project well. They do have a great chance of being the top stack. In fact, the highest chance. But if they're going to be twice the ownership of some of these other teams that are pretty much the same chance of being the top stack, like 1% to 2%, within 1% to 2%, that's going to be a team I'm probably looking to get away from. It looks like that's coming to fruition with my crunches. So I'm actually looking at the team with the lowest top stack percentage. It is a really low probability play, but they are also one of the lowest ownership shares on DraftKings. So Team Liquid, I am playing some of, and I'm definitely going to – who'd you mention, Jeremy, was in if they do go off, who was going to who would be your favorite captain from Team Liquid?
It would be Double Lift by miles.
Got it.
If he tries really hard, he can do it.
Cool. I'm going to give him a thumbs up on FC, make sure I get a few Team Liquid Double Lift stacks.
Nice, man. I like it. And given that Cloud9, not only are they the biggest favorite on the slate, but they had such a big performance yesterday. It wouldn't be surprising if you take out a lot of the competition right by that upset happening. Yeah. And I mean, we see it in League of Legends. I mean, there can be overwhelming favorites, but Jeremy, I'll throw this one to you. So, like, what can happen during a League of Legends game where maybe the underdog comes through? Like, what has to happen for that to occur?
A lot of times, if an underdog is to win, typically the games go later and they only need to win like one fight to win the game. Teams that are not as talented as their opponent, if they try to force the action, a lot of the times they'll get pushed back because the other team's just better. So if you can not lose immediately and have the game go a little bit longer, death timers tend to be long, and you can win one fight, win the game, basically.
Yeah, and when we're talking about losing immediately, I mean, that's bad for the team that wins in fantasy. So that's how you can have a team like Cloud9 that's like such a overwhelming favorite over their opponent, and then they don't have that much better chance than anyone else to be the highest scoring team. So it's kind of like other some sports where maybe like you don't want the blowout because your guys, in this case, they aren't playing past 30-minute mark. But in other sports, like they'd get pulled after that mark. So a little bit of a different dynamic, but still the same principle.
Yeah, I was going to ask if there is kind of a law of diminishing returns as like you get a larger and larger and larger favorite, because I'm noticing I'm not playing some of these massive favorites. And I've seen some like contrarian players just outright fade these huge favorites. And so it looks crazy. But when you learn more about the gameplay, it sounds like if you do just smoke a team and the team is really expensive that does the killing of the other team, that they might not actually live up to their ownership. You're still going to have to compete with a ton of people, but they have to have a massive performance to even be considered in the top lineup based on their price.
Yeah, for sure. So like it's a question of upside. So like the number one thing I'd say like for fantasy projections of League of Legends is that like in most sports, fantasy performance is to some degree like a normal distribution, where like if you have a guy projected for 20 fantasy points, he's going to score 15 as often as he will 25. In League of Legends, it doesn't really work that way because there's such a difference between winning and losing. So like what it is that today Cloud9 has a 72% chance to win. So like the projection is like 72% times the winning average plus 28% times the losing average. And then there's like a distribution between those two like outcomes. So what you find is that like if you have a high projection for a guy, that means that the variance isn't going to be quite as big as a low projection, just because they lock in that win, and that's what you're paying for, is like guaranteed win and not necessarily the upside. At least that's my take on it. Jeremy, what are your thoughts?
No, that sounds pretty much correct. Is that a lot of the times the favorites do win too quickly. Typically not in like LPL and LCK, but in LCS, C9, they can win too quickly. Teams that are favored too much, do definitely have that risk. And it's just something you have to take into consideration when how much you want of that team.
All right, good to know. So we got 3 games left here to break down. So Jeremy, we're looking at, we talked about Cloud9 versus Team Liquid and 100 Thieves and Counter Logic. What's the next game on your list for fantasy lineups?
Probably Dignitas and TSM, because that's the second game of the day. And it's right before my favorite game of Immortals and EG. But both of these teams also have a lot to play for in this game. And their prices are very gettable on both sides. So I really like that game also just from a DFS perspective.
Nice. So it's like we don't have as good a chance of picking the winner, but or guessing the winner, right? But they're cheap, and that makes it so you can get like stronger players in your lineup. So the current line is that Team Solomid is minus 180 versus Dignitas. So 63 to 36. Which side of this one are you falling on?
Oh, I think TSM should comfortably bounce back from their disappointment from yesterday and lock in a top 4 slot by beating Dignitas, which is why stuff like Dardoch and Bjergsen and Kabe, they're all just so cheap. And they just call out to me.
What are they saying?
They're saying, pick me, just jam me in your lineups. I'm like, I can't have too much of you.
That's pretty hard to ignore. And so one of the things I put on my top stacks tool is the top value percentage. And right now, so the average salary on Dignitas is 5,900. Team Solomid is 7K. So as far as the average salary, Team Solomid's right in about second highest on this, or third highest on the slate. Dignitas is actually like the fourth cheapest. So it actually like kind of mid salaries, I'd say. So that just helps you get in like the best players from the team, I'd say, like mid and ADC. So, Jake, which guys on these teams are you finding you're getting some exposure to?
It's pretty flat. But I think I am getting to more of I'm just going to use the abbreviations DIG because they're coming up as a little bit of a better value for us on your top stacks tool.
Nice. All right. Jeremy, any players from Dignitas that we should be kind of keeping an eye on?
So it'd be mostly Froggen and Huni that I got from Dignitas. Huni kind of didn't have a great game yesterday, but he's someone that coming into the year was known as someone that could be very explosive and have really big games. And his lane partner against his lane matchup against Broken Blade. Broken Blade's the most expensive top laner, so that's someone I'm having difficulties getting to. But Huni's like much easier to fit in with Dignitas lineups.
Nice. Yeah. So Broken Blade, like it is a little bit contrarian maybe to pay up for like your top laner. Is he worth that kind of expense? Because I mean, his team obviously not like one of the biggest favorites on the day.
Yeah, so a lot of it does depend on the champions they pick and if the junglers do decide to assist them. But Broken Blade is someone that's just performed. He's had 20 points in his last 4 games. Over his last 5 games, he's had games of almost 40 points scored. He's someone I feel very comfortable playing, but he's harder to get to because the other pieces of TSM are so cheap, or are just cheaper comparatively.
Yeah, so that's that may be a scenario where you could pay up to be contrarian. So let me pull my ownership real quick. Find Broken Blade. So Team Solomid, I have them as average of 18% ownership, and then Broken Blade is at 17%. So actually, maybe I'm overrating this a little bit, where the ownership's pretty spread out among the team. All right, we got 2 games left here. So we got Golden Guardians at FlyQuest. I'm finding I'm getting a lot of FlyQuest in my crunch here. Jake, how about you? How much FlyQuest are you seeing?
Yeah, a ton. They're a big favorite. It looks like they're going to be owned at a relatively actually, they're pretty good in terms of their ownership. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're valued pretty well in the top stack tool. They're not like crazy overvalued. And I think they're probably a good pivot off of Cloud9 looking at the top stack tool.
Nice. And FlyQuest is 10-7 on the year. That's second in the league. Cloud9 is 16-1. So there's a huge gap between first and second. But Jeremy, is FlyQuest kind of deserving of their record, or like have they been a little bit lucky this year?
FlyQuest has been not obscenely lucky. They've been a little bit lucky, but they're just a really solid team. And I think that that's why it's really easy to get to them. And that you look at everything they do and how expensive they are compared to other players at certain positions. And they can be really easy to fit into lineups, and you'll feel good about it. Like Power of Evil is just playing insane. There were talks that he might be MVP if FlyQuest continued to perform well. The last few weeks they've been kind of average, but Power of Evil is really, really good.
Nice. And he plays the position that you want a captain too, so that could be a potential captain. I noticed that they've put Solo in their lineup at top instead of Viper. So that's a little bit interesting because Viper started the first it looks like dozen or so games of the season. So what was the thinking there? Like what happened where Solo got the starting position?
It's actually really hard to tell because we got that news like an hour and a half or something after the slate locked, which was weird because usually you can have some inclination that something might happen, but this was very random. So I'm not positive why Solo got inserted into the starting lineup. I have no concrete reason as to why that happened.
That's interesting. Yeah, there's always stuff going on behind the scenes that maybe we don't know about. So that's something to keep an eye on. But this being the second day of the weekend, we have a pretty solid idea who's going to start. It was actually funny yesterday because I saw Peter Overzet, one of our friends of the show, tweeting at one of the players, Stixay. He's like, "Yo, you starting today?" And Stixay responded like, "Yes, I am," or something. So it's funny because these guys, obviously very connected on the internet. Like you could actually probably message them and talk to them if you really were inclined. But all right, so if FlyQuest is kind of the favorite, Golden Guardians, another one of the weaker teams in the league, I would say. Like, how do you like them as kind of maybe a contrarian play, Jake?
Oh, I'm sorry, but
how are you feeling about the Golden Guardians as a contrarian play?
Yeah, let me see here. They're not coming up a ton for me in crunches. I do have, their ownerships are really low. So yeah, as a contrarian play, plus 255 just in my short time playing League of Legends DFS. I feel like I've seen it a dozen times where a 300 plus underdog ends up winning the game. And Alex, I think you had a huge night the other week where you didn't have a ton in your crunch, I noticed, but you had like 5 or 6% of a 2% owned stack, and you won everything that morning. So this could be one of those spots where they are pretty low owned, and you don't need a ton, like Jeremy was saying. I can't remember which team, but that you don't need a ton to get overweight. So I'm targeting all these underdogs, especially in this top heavy $15 on DK that looks like it's about to fill pretty soon.
Man, so reserve your spots to get that 100K. All right. Yeah, my experience has been that if a team's not showing up in a crunch, that could be the pay up to be contrarian spot, or maybe they're just not projected high enough with randomness to even make it. But like as more of the field shifts to lineup optimizers, like it is going to happen when they're trying to build 20,000 entry tournaments. Some of these teams that don't stand out as lineup optimization plays maybe go under the radar, and Golden Guardians could be one of them today. Jeremy, how have you seen like the landscape change since that optimizers have been more in play?
So prior to sports being canceled, this tournament, like the spring finale, was going to be like 10K up top. And like that's pretty good for League of Legends. And most nights, LPL and LCK slates, there'd be like a $12 4 to 8 max with like 1K up top. So with all the optimizers and the new people coming in, it's just, for me, it's just getting used to more volume and figuring that aspect out of it. Because when you're playing like a 7 or 8 max, they were random numbers and they were different every night. Just how you go about building is different. So for me, it's just figuring out that aspect of it.
Yeah, so the strategy is for a 20,000 person tournament. a lot different than a 2,000-person tournament or so. So
For sure.
it's definitely worth, especially in a tournament where a third of the prize pool is going to first and it's a big field, taking some more long shots. So something I'm going to be trying to do today. In the last game, we got Evil Geniuses. Jeremy, you were saying they're one of your preferred teams of the day, playing the Immortals. You were mentioning how this game is pretty relevant for the playoff situation with Evil Geniuses really needing a win here. Or is it they just affect the chances of Team Liquid? And what's the implication of this game for Evil Geniuses?
So everyone that's not Cloud9, the only playoff position that's available is the last playoff position, the 6th playoff position. So everyone else is kind of fighting for 2 through 5. If you're in the top 4, you get a double elimination, where if you're 5th or 6th, if you lose once, you're just done. So teams should want to be in the top 4. So that includes EG. If they win, they're top 4. And they have, and if Immortals wins, they're in the playoffs.
It's pretty big stakes. So Immortal is clearly going to be playing for that playoff spot. Are you taking both sides of this one, or do you just really like the Evil Geniuses side?
I have both sides of this one because I think since this game is very important, I think one team will win quickly, which is really weird. But how I have it is that one team's going to fold and one team's going to crush. And I usually don't do something like that. But today is the day. And in thinking this, neither team's super, super popular. So I can more comfortably do that for me and not feel super bad about it because I don't think it'll ruin my day being over on both teams.
Nice. Yeah, so I mean the underdogs are definitely teams that's easier to go over on. So in this case, actually both teams are going to be pretty high owned that I'm looking at it. Immortals 11%, Evil Geniuses 14%. So actually, a lot of people are kind of on your side where maybe just taking shots on the game. So it should be a good one to watch for the implications of this one. All right, so let's close out the slate here. Jake, any final thoughts for how we should try to win this 100K today?
I think what I'm going to try to do is target some of these underdogs. And I really like maybe not doing it with all your lineups, but I'm definitely going to have a portion of my lineups running like a 4-2, stacking up some of these top plays, these top captains, and there's just one-offing the team. So I'm getting, even though I'm not playing a lot of like Team Liquid stacks, I'm still playing some, but I have a bunch of them as one-offs and like some of these underdogs that are cheap in the team spot, and just hope that one of them can kind of get the win and you make up a ton of points elsewhere and you can pass up some of these 4-3 stackers. It feels like there's going to be a ton of them today.
Yeah, definitely. Especially like the ones that are the highest projected points, I think are going to be very heavily owned. Going to be probably chopping it up with a lot of people, so like that. Jeremy, what are your thoughts on the slate as a whole here?
If you want to win 100K and you are less risk averse, you should project that Team Liquid and C9 games are going to be crazy, and the 100 Thieves and CLG games are going to be crazy, and then play those 2 games. A lot of those 2 games, because those games could be crazy, and if they are crazy, those are going to be the optimal. But it's hard to project that those games won't matter. So if you are less risk averse, then don't do it. But if you can handle some risk, then you want to win 100K, there you go.
I like it, man. So if you narrow down the games that you're playing, like you can cover more of those combinations. So I think that's a great strategy if you have a sense of what games you think will be the best for fantasy tonight. So like it, I'll just say, there's a lot of new people playing. So you want to make sure you're sticking to the fundamentals. We talked about a lot of them today, like having good stacking, making sure that you have the right position in the captain, usually mid or ADC, because those are the most offensive positions. And one way to get a little bit contrarian is leave some salary off the board. So if you take two teams that combined might not have the highest chance of both getting the win, a lot of people aren't going to go that far down. That gives you a great chance to kind of be unique. So, all right, guys, good luck today. A very exciting day for League of Legends DFS, the biggest tournament in League of Legends history. So very excited to see how this one turns out. And make sure to stay tuned on the site. We got some second chances tonight with the LPL and every day pretty much. And then we have playoffs coming soon, so that'll be very exciting. So guys, good luck and have fun. GLHF.